time yet again for a weekly AMA. I don't know why I just lost my train of thought there on like the simplest sentence. We're gonna give it a few minutes. We got a couple more people that are gonna hop on stage as they are doing so, and then we'll give a minute for some more people to hop in the audience, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. I believe this is everybody that we're gonna have. Oh, nope, Tango slipped in. All right. Well, if there's anybody else, they can hop up. But we will go ahead and get started. And as is tradition, first thing we're gonna do is go to Frisky Fox for his updates.
It's a good tradition. Thank you, Bolan. Happy to be here. Happy to be seeing everyone here. How's everyone doing? I guess you can answer back, but it's been a busy week. We had the vote for the Serendale 2.0 tokenomics, and that passed, as we all know from last week. And we've been busy basically moving forward with all of the things that have to happen for that. And there's a lot that has to happen. But the first steps, of course, are planning what to turn off and when. For those of you who might not know, our plan is to move Serendale to the Klaytn chain, and it will be called Serendale 2.0 for the interim period, but after we move, it'll just be Serendale again. And as we do that, we would like to have a orderly exit with the smallest amount of like disruption as possible. So the the parity that we've been creating for all of our in-game features on the FK chain is a big part of that. There are some things that aren't yet up to feature parity, so those things are going to take a little bit longer to be turned off on Serendale, so that when we do turn something off on Serendale, there will be an option for you to bridge over to Crystal Vale to still continue to play the game without any disruptions there. So that's very important to us. We've hashed out after a few like meetings and things what we'd like to turn off next week and the following week, and we have a pretty good idea of the next couple of weeks and the order of those. But there are some ramifications that involve like tokenomics and things that we're still kind of hashing out for those. But we're planning to share at least what we'll be turning off next week at the end of this AMA. And then I think also the week after we'll be sort of hinting or kind of like sharing our tentative plans for those as well, although they are open to change as is needed. And then we're also creating sort of a timeline or some kind of a perhaps infographic or something that we'll be able to release to the community to be able to easily see what is coming up this next week and the following week and the following week and so on, so that everyone can be on the same page. So that is all progressing very nicely. We have a pretty solid plan in place for that, and I'm really pleased with it. Other things, we turned off duels this week. Speaking of starting to turn off things on Serendale, duels were turned off last night, and the interface is turned off, and the smart contracts won't allow any new duels to be started. And the existing duels that were in there were all matched with other duels. I think there's one left over in the 3 and 9, so I'm gonna be canceling those, I think, and then refunding the jewel fees and such to those that were there. So just FYI on those. And duels are progressing for Crystal Vale launch because we want to relaunch them over there, and it will be season one for that. So the current one was basically the preseason or season zero, and it was more of a test to see what worked and what didn't work and what can be improved. And there was a lot of things that had to do with like the matchmaking that we have been sort of working on to improve so that it's more fair, it feels more balanced, and it's less able to be gamed by people. So there's a lot of improvements there that we'll be launching with season one. Um, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about duels probably a bit later. I saw some of the AMA questions were about duels as well, so I'll hold off for those. Um, the only other thing is we have been individually meeting with our counterparts over on the Klaytn team. They have a very rich ecosystem. There's a lot of integrations with tools and such there, and we've been having like our front end devs meet with their like devs, our Solidity people meeting with their Solidity people, our marketing meeting with their marketing, etc., to basically coordinate efforts there and to figure out what we're able to do. And I think there's even some things with the events that we've been sort of meeting about. So there's some exciting things there, and it feels very nice to be able to have that dialogue with them. It's a thing that we didn't really do a lot here on Harmony. We have been doing a lot with Avalanche and with like Avalabs, and that's great. And it's really nice to have that level of support and that like level of partnership over there as well. So really awesome feeling and like really good news on that front. And those are the main things from me. So I'll hand the mic back over to you, Bolan, and we can proceed.
Awesome. I just wanted to double down. Meeting with the Klaytn people has been awesome. They're really great and super excited to be working with us as we are to be working with them, and that's always just a fun conversation when both parties are invested and excited. So we're gonna go to Dreamer for his updates.
Hey everybody. My updates are going to kind of follow on what has just been mentioned with working with Klaytn. So, in addition to meeting with their team, which we mentioned last week, it's been ongoing this week as well, and those efforts are progressing. We are now getting exposed to many other projects that are either currently on or planning to be on Klaytn, which is really exciting because one of the big benefits and potential like areas of growth for DeFi kingdoms is the gamified like visualization of what is on a chain, whether it's DFK chain, the chain that we're running on the Avalanche subnet, or any other chains that we end up on. We really want to kind of open our arms, so to speak, as I don't know, cliche or weird as that sounds, to other projects to reach out and say, hey, how can we work together? How can we make our tokens be cross, protocol, cross game, cross platform, compatible? What DeFi protocols are there that we might be able to bring in? What other games are there that we might be able to sync up with and integrate potentially? And I think at this point, been doing 2 or 3 a week of people reaching out and starting to get the conversations going. So that's really exciting. I think in the past it has been a little bit more difficult, and I do think with the announcement, some of the narratives were a large blue chip project is coming to Klaytn. What about all the other smaller, newer projects? Is this going to be bad for them? We're trying to do our best that as long as we can work with others and people are open to collaborating, it really should be good for everybody involved. And we want to make sure that's the case. We don't want to have a negative impact on others, and we do want to have that open mindset, that Ready Player One kind of long-term goal. And it takes a lot of work to get there, and we're putting in that work on the relationship side initially. I just want to echo that, working with them and continuing to work with Avalanche has been going very well. And I've been super impressed and grateful for Fox and the team, and looking at the timeline as it relates to the transfers of everything, because we're trying to do this in the most predictable, least disruptive way possible. And I can really attest to the efforts and time going into that, which is awesome. So more to come on some of the relationships that we're establishing now. They are kind of all kinds of projects. One of them is a very interesting kind of move to earn project that we haven't really thought about brainstorming how to work with up till now with the others that are out there. So more to come there, and then obviously there are other things that you'd expect like dexes and aggregators and other things that are on chain, looking to see what we might be able to do to work together. And then, games, obviously, we really want to work with games regardless of following so that the DFK tokens might be more usable on other platforms and that other games might be able to come in so it can grow in a really strong, healthy, awesome way in any type of a bull market. So that is my update on the relationships as it is linked to Klaytn. The other thing is the deal term is progressing this week, so we didn't release details on the incentives. We confirmed there were incentives. I just wanted to give an update that probably by the end of the week we're looking to solidify that a little bit more. That was something that we needed to finish the vote on because whatever type of token swap or incentives that result, it really needed to come after we got buy-in from the community on the proposal. So we'll look to share details as those are finalized, but that has progressed pretty well this week as well.
Fantastic. I am going to hit a couple people and put them on the spot for some updates as well. However, if anybody has an update that they want to share and I miss you, feel free to just speak up. But let's start with Beetle Dude. You got anything fun for us today?
Oh, I've always got fun things. So I mean, from the build side, we had a release yesterday. I know the headliner was that gardening didn't go out yesterday. We are still kind of plugging away on that, making good progress, making sure that Agnes gets to sleep sometimes in his life. And I think it's looking pretty good. We've got gardening, which has some additional features that are coming with it, along with the multi-questing and multi-quest start and complete. So there's just a lot bundled into it, a lot of testing that we need to do, and just make sure that everything's looking good. But that will be the next thing that's coming. I think Fox mentioned duels, so that's on the docket as well to be moving over to Crystal Vale. That'll be exciting to have the season 1 start officially on our own DFK chain. That'll be awesome. And then we're just plugging away. We've got after gardening quest, we're looking at pet considerations, so pet hatching, pet sales, and pet bridging. And I don't know, there's just a ton of stuff. And then also trying to starting to think about the Serendale 2.0 updates as well. So just a ton on the plate, but it's all exciting stuff, and we're excited to be bringing it to the community.
For sure.
That's me.
Well, let's go to your arch rival, second best dad. See if he can top your update.
I'm going to remember that you called on him first.
Better not.
Yeah, I mean, so everybody's seen the big tavern updates. Another NPC drop. Got some characters kind of talking about other characters, as well as sort of the first mini storyline in the castle with Egon, everybody's favorite cultist. I think it's kind of our intention to give people a reason to come back, not just for features with the patches, but also for the world evolving as time goes along. So, characters will move around and talk to each other and have opinions about the Dwarf King. It's all. And other than that, we're working on the dark summoning chamber, for instance, is a big thing that's going to be exciting moving forward, and the dark summoner as well. And other than that, everything else is too spoilery. So,
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll take a poll later to see who's update won. And then let's go to Pieface.
Hi, everybody. Alrighty. I feel like it's been a while since I've been in an AMA, and it's so great to talk to everybody. But I have some cool updates for everybody. There is something going on in Singapore and Asia. It's Crypto Asia Week at the end of September, and it's built around the Token 1049 conference, and we will be having a small DeFi Kingdoms presence at the Klaytn booth. And that's something we're really excited about. We're kind of coming out of the woodwork. But we'll be bringing merch and hope to meet some of you on that side of the world. I'm super excited for that since it's been a little bit since we've done some events. And speaking of Klaytn, we're working very hard with the marketing. We actually connected with the Klaytn marketing team and just on how to get the Serendale 2.0 and migration to not only generate hype, but it's definitely a top priority for us to make sure we take care of everybody, like new users and Klaytn users, and especially for current users is a big priority, like people who quest summoners and investors and or just people who are doing the DeFi aspect of DeFi Kingdoms. So we are working hard on a lot of informative content and articles and working not only internally on with all of this, but also with the community on shareable infographics. Just because it's great to have visuals and seeing things. There's a lot of visual learners because it is kind of a complicated process. I know that when we first announced things, people were unsure about some things at first, but I think once doing your own research and understanding the how this whole migration works will be really important to make it easy to understand. But yeah, and that's most updates for me. But I actually have a little mini merch update. Is that we got our bloater in second best dad style. The plush is complete, and we're looking forward to getting them shipped and delivered to be able to then get it onto the site and get some of this limited bloater plush action coming, I think, in the next couple months or so. So that's all for me. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. I'm excited for the bloater plush. Looks super comfortable. Uh, Before we start in on some questions, did anybody have anything they wanted to throw out there? Any updates that they wanted to give before we move on?
I've got some updates.
Yes.
So, good news from last week that the hard fork was completed successfully by our validators. It switched over seamlessly without a disruptive network event. So that now gives us the ability to change the network fees. Nothing to announce this week on that front, but we may have something very soon on that once we hammer out a few of the technical details. And then if you're still having issues with your node syncing, but please check out the DFK chain Twitter account, the information you need in terms of running a node. I know Avalanche has released several versions of Avalanche Go, even just a few minutes ago. There's a recent one, so be sure to follow the Avalanche the Twitter accounts as well to make sure you're getting those updates. And on the contract side of things, like Beetle mentioned, I've been polishing up gardening, and we have the dual reward quest fund, pretty good spot to be handed over. So that will bring everything up to the V2 version of Quest Core. We'll be deprecating the V1 version going forward. And then next up, as Beetle mentioned, we'll be moving on to the pet related features and bringing those to parity over in Crystal Vale. I also mentioned on the partnership side, there's an important security update to layer 0, which affected the item bridge for a few hours, but able to get that remediated. And so it should be working if you kind of ran into that issue. And then also this week, Layer 0 Labs announced a block explorer to basically facilitate checking transactions across the Layer 0 bridge. that we use for the item bridge, and that's layer 0 scan. So if you have any questions about the status of your items, please check there. And I believe Beetle may be integrating that into the front end as well, so you can just click that transaction and see that status to make it a little easier. That's it for me.
Appreciate you, Magnus. Sunbear, I saw you unmute. Did you have an update for us as well?
Yeah, just a quick one. We're planning on activating our jester and archivist next week. So when you come into the castle next week, you'll be able to click on the jester and see the first few games that have applied for co-marketing with us that use some of our assets. You'll be able to see a screenshot and some information about the game and the team and links there to go play. And in the archivist, you'll be able to see some of the services out there, maybe around hero pricing or some of the tools that are out there to help support people. So you'll start to see those coming in more. These will just be our first few that have already gone through the co-marketing process, but looking forward to that. And then just wanted to also mention, I know we had talked about mentioning this as a team. Condolences to our partners in the UK. Just heard about Queen Elizabeth passing, so just wanted to mention that our hearts are with you.
Most definitely. That was sad news to hear. We are going to start hitting some questions now. So let's get started with a really fun one, actually, in my opinion. Give me 1 second. Let me go find the actual question. There it is. So this is for Jax. Lore, what's the story with ints? There are what look like mini ints all over Crystal Vale. Are they tree folk related? Are they related to Spriggans? Is Crystal Vale their main home? Etc.
So yeah, the ints in Crystal Vale, they are unique, and those particular ints that you see, like Int Shaman, Iron Root, and Nettle Leaf, they are what they are is reserved to Fifth Raven and Crystal Vale because sometime after the Sundering, the Zenra was tasked to guard Fifth Raven from any threats throughout the Dark Age. And because of the Kraken looming out into the Nottawa Deep, that most of our heroes unfortunately perished in the perilous journey, he needed help protecting that village at all cost. So these Ents are ancestral spirits that have chosen to allow Scadrasail to use their essence and pretty much become reincarnated into these Ents that were hand carved by the citizens of Ithraven themselves. They kind of retain a little bit of their memory of their former selves, which helps shape their personalities, but they are mainly their own being, and they help protect the valley from any threats that linger out in the frozen landscape.
Awesome. I'm always really excited to get some insight on the lore, and I know there's some really cool stuff planned on that front as well. We're going to go to some mechanics questions, so we'll probably primarily hear from Hubert, but potentially some others as well. First question is around pet feeding. It was said in a previous AMA that feeding pets wouldn't be a daily occurrence. Is the plan for it to be bound by time or by a number of quests completed? So, would using stamina potions also mean that you're going to need to feed your pet more often?
Sure, yeah. Great question. So the plan with that is for it to be time-based. So if you use stamina potions, you'd be able to get more benefit out of your pet than otherwise.
Awesome. And then the second one is around level 10 mining. And if we are prepared to give an idea of what that looks like relative to level 0 mining.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, I guess it's a little bit difficult to like say straight percentages, just because like as far as the equation goes, it's generally using the same factors. There will be let's see, I believe it was about a 3% increase in the base values that it uses, but then also by being a level 10 quest, it will also allow heroes to increase their mining skill further, closer to 30. So that will also increase the amount of rewards that can be gained. And on top of that, along with the level 10 quest coming out, we will have pet functionality in place. So there are also some pet bonuses that could help out with your rewards as well.
So a lot of factors is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's hard to say a specific number really, but I mean, it's opening the doorway further for sure.
Fair enough. Speaking of mining, the mining threshold on Crystal Vale for crystal mining, which is currently at 5,000 locked crystal to be able to mine as much as possible in a given mining quest. Are we planning on changing that with the token cap changing?
So at this point, with mining already being out, and with there may be some users that didn't get in on Serendale and were only in Crystal Vale. It would, from my perspective, it would only really hurt our users if we were to change that cap, and it doesn't really benefit anyone. So the plan is to keep it as is.
And
Fantastic. Oh,
maybe
good.
just to like, yeah, like for any that are hearing that and they're like, wait, I don't quite understand. I think what Hubert's saying is the minimum amount of locked crystal required in order to participate. If we were to or double that as a result, it really wouldn't change the yield. It's not like doubling how much you can earn at once. It just increases the minimum threshold to even participate. So the comment of it doesn't really help anybody. That's not really an opinion. It's fact based. It just increases your ability to even participate. So there would only be people hurt by it, which, for reasons mentioned by Hubert, doesn't seem like the best thing to consider at this time, which I think we all agree with on this side. Hubert, was that accurate? I just wanted to elaborate a little bit in case people were not following quite closely, but is that accurate to your comments?
Right, yeah, just to say it in another way, so the cap we're talking about is the threshold that you need to be able to get maximum efficiency when you're mining. So if you're below the threshold, your rewards will be just scaled down based on how far away you are from that cap. So if we were to increase the cap, it would just make it so if you currently had like 6,000 locked crystal, suddenly you'd be getting less from your mining quest. But if someone had like over 10,000, it wouldn't really have changed anything for them. So really, it's those people in the middle there that would be hurt by that. Or really anyone that's underneath the threshold would get less. So no plans to change that.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a good distinction. It's not talking about increasing yield, only what's required to get that yield. All right, and then we got a couple more mechanics questions. So Gen 0, 1 through 19, the dominant and recessive advanced plus genes, however, cosmetic genes, not the skill genes that we've already talked about. Those will be re-rolled for both those Gen Zeros and their descendants, but specific around cosmetic genes, if we have any plans on re-rolling those.
So yeah, just to be clear what we're talking about, so the color genes associated with hair color, back appendage, and eye color, those ones, when we created those, we did allow ourselves to use any of the options, including those that are advanced or above. And that was by choice, not by mistake like it was with the recessive genes on the skill. The gameplay affecting was the passive and active skill genes. So our plan is to leave those as is. So that was just a part of the customization that we allowed for the appearance of those. heroes.
Perfect. And then I have one other question that is kind of mechanics, but also just kind of general. And that is actually, sorry, I lied. Oh no, I was right. I can read. Good news, everybody. It's a question around guilds. If we have any plans that we can say now as far as what benefits we have planned for guilds. Are we planning on doing like a size cap of players or heroes? And what the priority level in terms of guilds as a feature is.
Yeah, Fox may be able to add some more to this. With guilds, as we do plan to have there be limits, and I think what we've been talking about is having that being tied to land ownership. However, as far as like how many users and what kind of limits thereof, those haven't really been fleshed out at this point. With all that's going on with the Crystal Veil parody and now with this move to Klaytn, guilds, I'd say, not the highest priority on our list, though it is something that we think is very important to the game, and something that we do want to have well integrated in, and with a lot of different features tied to it once the time comes. It's just a matter of, kind of each step to get there, I would say. But yeah, I don't know, Fox, if there's more you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. It's the highest priority in our hearts. I'll say that. At least mine. There's just a lot of things that are tied to it. It's like one of those things where it's like, okay, if you give a mouse a cookie, then all these things. So if we want to have guilds, then land and travel and chat and achievements, and it's just all these things. And so it's basically trying to work backwards from that and say, okay, what is the thing that we need to have in place first, and then just basically plugging away at that until we get there. I can say, and I think I've shared this in some other AMAs before, but some of our thoughts about it, which are at this point still very nascent and can change. But what I would like to see is a very tight integration between lands and guilds, so that if you want to have a guild, you have to have land. And if you want to have a larger guild that can support more people, you might have to have more land. Or like the like larger guilds might have to have multiple plots of land to be able to support all of the people in it. So that's a part of it, and we're sort of looking at that. We've actually started to reopen some of the brainstorming things for lands internally. We had some discussions about it last week, actually. So it is high on our minds, and it's just a matter of Serendale 2.0 having the priority right now, and then once we get that up and running, then it's like, okay, now we can do all the fun things that we have been holding off on. So yeah, that's it for that, and that's my viewpoint on it. But I will say one other thing. I've been thinking a lot lately over the past few weeks about decentralization and the importance of that in any blockchain project. And I'm a huge fan of it. And I'd like to have more of a decentralized approach to some of these things as well, so that it's not necessarily just one studio like us over here at Kingdom Studios basically deciding all the things, but we want to have more dialogue, more back and forth, more input, and perhaps even have other people build certain parts of things, like maybe like the ancillary things. It's always hard to balance creating a cohesive and fun experience with having so many cooks in the kitchen, but we're trying to look at ways to do that as well. So, I mean, if there is people out there that have ideas or things like that, feel free to go put it on the talk site. We do read those. There's a lot of really cool ideas there already, and that's really what it's for. And this whole experience is meant to be very decentralized and collaborative, because really we're all playing, we're all building, and that's the whole beauty of this stuff on the blockchain. So, yep, that's my soapbox, and I'll step down.
Appreciate it, Fox. And actually, I was wrong. I forgot one last question that had come in right before this that is mechanics related. Inventory while traveling or questing, will there be a backpack mechanic, mounts? Are we planning on having a carry limit?
So with traveling, no plans for carrying limits, just associated with traveling. However, I will say with combat, there are planned limits for the amount of potions you can bring.
Awesome. Appreciate it, sir. And then we'll go to some tokenomics questions. So thoughts on with the tokenomics change, uh, thoughts on Joule and listing on a centralized exchange. I know we've spoke about that before, but basically have those thoughts changed with the new tokenomics structure. Imagine Dreamer probably.
Sure, I can start on that one. Yeah, it's a great observation and was part of the discussions as well. Repurposing the token of Joule, which probably carries the largest like intellectual property in terms of the token itself, the name, its association with DeFi kingdoms, and the long-term scalability across chain. Since the other tokens are meant to be realm specific, chain specific, Joule is really meant to represent the gamification of all things, the tokenization of all things gaming, and the metaverse as we're trying to create it on our side. So that means that a lot of the downsides that were ever present with listing Joule at any point really in the last year, you could still argue are still there, but their impact is different now. So one of the views that was expressed by a number of people that I think was fair was if we take a token, a game token that is meant to have majority or all of the utility in the game be listed in many places outside of the game where prices are followed. There's a lot of trading tools linked and centralized exchanges potentially looking to write perpetual contracts on them that allow people to synthetically short the token. It's kind of hard because now a lot of holders of the token aren't even playing the game that the token was meant for. But with Joule being, governance, fee sharing, and representative of like the cross-chain product that is DeFi Kingdoms is in our new trajectory, it makes a lot more sense for somebody to hold that token and not be required to use it to actively play all parts of the actual game. And when I say not all parts, I mean, obviously you can still use Joule and the jeweler. There is still going to be crossovers of holding X Joule as it relates to benefits or potential subscriptions or other models that we come out with. It just won't necessarily be the token of choice to summon or buy. And so Hero is your upgrade or level up, as is Crystal and the potential for the new token to be announced on Klaytn. So we are revisiting, sorry, very long way to, to prepare my answer, but we are revisiting listing Joule on other exchanges. We had talks already with Binance and Coinbase, probably going to be circling back there. One thing to note is a lot of the centralized exchanges have either internal fees or you need to work with the market maker, who again isn't free, in order to make sure that the liquidity is managed between like the native source of Joule and where it's being listed and traded. We will probably continue to focus on perpetual contracts being opted out, which a lot of the centralized exchanges are actually doing now, especially in the bear market, where as before, it was kind of, they could do whatever they want. So if you're listed there and there's trading and there's liquidity, they might also add some value. In recent conversations, it seems like they're respecting projects who request that not be the case. And I think we're going to, proceed cautiously with that approach. Our partners over at Klaytn are going to be making introductions to a number of centralized exchanges in Asia as well, in addition to decentralized exchanges in their ecosystem. So definitely looking to get Joule listed on many different areas. We'll probably continue to be cautious one on perpetual contracts to recap, but also on the game-specific tokens. More to come on that. I'm sure we would see how Joule listings go before ever considering like a Crystal or a Klaytn Power token listing, because then it reintroduces the same issues we talked about prior to restructuring of tokens. So I hope that was thorough enough. Bolon, do you think there's anything else that I should touch on, or anybody else on that would like to add?
Doesn't look like anybody else. So no, I think that's a really good summary. Obviously a little bit too soon for us to have made those strides yet, but gives a good outlook on our outlook for the future. So I think that's perfect. All right, there we go. I accidentally muted. There is one other tokenomics related question. It's a somewhat long one, so I'm going to summarize it the best that I can. Dreamer, I think you've looked at the question itself as well, but just to summarize it for those listening, is around basically liquidity pooling and APRs and the current token structure, and it's basically talking about reducing emissions and emitting for longer to remove the locked mechanics around the rewards to have lower but more long-term APRs without locked rewards.
Yeah, so I think for any that hear that overview and are curious to learn more, you can go and read the suggestion and question on the site. But an initial response, I think, that is one of this is a good idea. I think that it is an idea that isn't necessarily better than a structure that we have now in all scenarios of bull and bear market. It also isn't how we structured a lot of the game itself. So if we were to consider this very, very seriously, it would be, from my perspective, a lot more disruptive than the changes that were in the last proposal. And this is where I think I hinted a week or two ago, a lot of the good ideas that came in, implementation and disruption are a big factor of whether or not we can, pursue them in the short term. And if we were to reduce emissions or allocate them elsewhere, that would essentially be a huge change to everybody's current allocations and related rewards. If we were to adjust, unlocking or essentially have potentially no lock tokens, that would also adjust like mining quests and other structures that are deeply embedded in the game. Excuse me. So I'm not trying to talk negatively about this suggestion. I think that it is a very interesting one, and there's a lot of pros to it. It's just almost a completely different model altogether, and therefore the resulting disruption is quite high. Higher the disruption, the harder it is to consider implementation, because even with the best ideas that people have and we implement, we never make everybody happy. And that's where the governance and votes and everything come in, is to try to level set and check there. So the response to this question is, and we did talk about this one live in leading up to the move to Klaytn, and it was concluded that a lot of the good suggestions here, if they would be bundled into a Serendale 2.0 launch, we worried it would just be so incredibly disruptive that it was not considered. However, as we continue to discuss, we're always open to realistic and fair ways to adjust things. Sorry, I'm like trying to mute quickly, but I can't when I'm coughing. So these discussions will continue to go. I think if there are other comments on this suggestion, love to hear them and see them come up. Just as Fox mentioned, trying to make sure that we continue to grow in a decentralized manner. But yeah, currently that's the reaction. Good suggestions, pros to stable APRs, but it would require not only disruptive, like short-term quick disruption, but kind of a revamp of a lot of the game mechanics and the way that questing and other features have been created. I don't know, Hubert, if you wanted to add on to that.
I actually have a thought real quick, but this is actually a thing that we did adjust a little bit in the Crystal Veil launch. We sort of smoothed it out a little bit more. And I think we're going to do a similar thing for the new power token over on Klaytn as well, because having it be smoother, having it be more stable with those APRs is in the best interests of everyone, especially for a project like ours that is now so well known. And like everyone already knows that it's not just some rug or something like that. Like there's a an actual like solid team there that's building regularly. It hasn't been hacked or anything like that. We have things that are in place there to be able to attract that liquidity even with like lower APRs that are more stable, because we are a more stable project is essentially what it comes down to. So we did kind of smooth that out more. And I think that's a plan as well for Serendale 2.0.
Perfect. Beautifully said. All right. So we have a handful of more general questions. So let's go ahead and Fox, I saw you were talking a little bit about it in the AMA voiceless chat channel. But as far as DFK chain goes, and a short version of why whitelisting is currently required.
Yeah, so this is a very like multifaceted answer. There's a lot of reasons. We actually involved advice, I guess, from like Ava Labs and others as well as we were launching. We were the first real subnet to launch with a like real use case like this, and have so many people like rush in and all those things, that we really wanted to make sure that the experience was as smooth as possible. We did a lot of testing. We put in tons of extra resources onto those like validator nodes, and it was a very good experience. But that was part of why we were like, okay, let's try this out. Let's start out with just having us basically doing the validators, because there's just so much involved in setting it up, coordinating it. Basically, like trying to launch a whole new chain is a lot of work, especially with us being the first ones without having a real trial and error thing to point to, or stuff that had been tried and tested. And actually there were things that we sort of were able to help to uncover issues and like upgrade things and stuff like that. So it was a very good test for us to be doing that, and I think it was very nice being able to work with Ava Labs for that. And that's part of why we made that choice, off of the recommendations that we had received from them. Part of that was we actually had to have a fork of their EVM code, and it had some of like the custom things that like we actually needed in it. We actually made the change a few weeks ago to move off of that fork and to go back to the core subnet EVM like repo that was maintained by Apple Labs, because they had added in all those features that we had needed. So that was great. And then starting last week, we did a hard fork to support a new upgrade mechanism there for that, which will basically make it a lot more seamless for us to upgrade and also for others too. So it kind of opens up the future path towards getting more validators in. And to be clear, that is the goal, is to get more validators in. What I would love to see is to see more guilds and things as they're formed actually running their own validators and actually helping to secure the network that they use and play, because that's really the end goal here, is to have it be just like very decentralized, and the whole ethos there of the blockchain is really like what it's all about. So that's my 2 cents. We are moving towards that. It is still a process because we want to make sure that we do it right, but that is for sure the goal. So stay tuned for that.
Perfect. And while we have you, let's talk about dual preseason rewards. So there's a question about, do we have any insight on what those rewards will be, and or what metrics we're going to be looking at: number of duels fought, amount of jewels spent, the overall ranking, etc.
Yeah, so I've kind of touched on this in the past a little bit, but I haven't actually announced any hard information for those prizes. So short answer is yes, there will be prizes. I think I've mentioned that we were looking at all kinds of different metrics, one of the main ones being score at the end, but also, there's other kinds of metrics that are there too that we could look at, like the most duels played and like stuff like that. So I'm not ready to release those yet. So hold off for a second on that. But basically, I think what it's going to end up being is I'll put up a proposal for the airdrops, and I'd like to see what the community thinks and actually do a vote on those. I'd like to start holding more smaller proposal votes for things like that, like for airdrops, because airdrops really are a thing that isn't really from Kingdom Studios ourselves. It's from the project as a whole, and so I think everyone should have a say on whether or not airdrops are accepted for those. So putting that out there as well. I think we will for sure do some really fun stuff, and stay tuned for those. I don't have those info right now, but I think I've kind of hinted at in the past that I'd like to do some kind of cool things that involved maybe like Gen Zeros. I think we have a couple that are still on hold from some of the allocated amount that we did from the launch for Crystal Vale. And there's some, eggs and items and things that would be fun as well. So, yep. Stay tuned for that.
Perfect. And then, so this one's going to be a little bit of a longer one, so bear with me. But it is in regards to accidental hero listings. 5 months ago, an open letter and petition was created, which collated and prioritized community suggestions on how to mitigate the problem of accidental hero listings. It got more than 60 signatures and was handed in person to Fox and Dreamer. Essentially, a response to that, the suggestion was made a few weeks ago in an AMA about introducing hero floor price warnings, which was essentially acknowledged as a really good idea, but that idea had also been presented in this letter. And so the summary of suggestions from the letter: move the rental listing to the portal, introduce a not for sale tag for heroes, add a time delay after listing before they could be purchased, introduce a visually clear reporting of heroes to be sold, implement a floor price calculator and suggestion or warnings. So basically just looking for response to these suggestions.
Okay, yeah, so that's a lot. I think I remember it was a couple weeks ago there was that suggestion about, or maybe it was a few weeks ago, there was that suggestion about like the floor price. I was like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. It's not the first time that I'd heard that, and I'm sorry if it came off that way, but it was a like really good idea the first time I've heard it, and I've heard it like 10 times. But yeah, it is a good idea. We have to be careful about that. We actually talked a lot about that internally, about does that open us up to risk if we're basically advertising like here's the price that you should set this at. So we've had like some back and forth on that, because we want to remain very much hands off and agnostic on like what the prices are and all that type of stuff. We can't control it, and we don't try to pretend to control it at all, because we can't. But it should be fair to at least show like here's the last few sales of heroes that had similar stats or something. I think I said in that AMA that it would be cool if somebody built a extension that would do that. And I think someone even said I've got a very similar extension. But what I would love to see is there's already existing architecture out there to create an extension for Chrome, for example, that would add some of those additional things in there as like really cool features. And I think that was what I would prefer. Some of these features could very well be built in game, but I don't think they have to be. I think they could also very well be built as an extension, and that could be very good things for like the building initiative as well. So that's my soapbox there for that. There was a few other points there as well. I think that the moving the hero hiring to the portal is a really good idea. We've also kind of talked about that internally, and I think that we made the decision that yes, that is a thing we'd like to do and change on our side. And what were the other 3 things there? Sorry, Bullen.
Nope, so moving the rental listing, which you just talked about, a not for sale tag for heroes. Well, I'll just go one at a time. How about that?
Yeah, so that's also a thing like we've been talking about for a long time, about having a hero tagging system that would allow you to basically say, I like this hero for mining, and I like this hero for whatever quest, or here's a team of heroes that I'll use for duels. Having those tags in place so that you don't maybe accidentally send someone who's supposed to be a miner on another quest, or someone who's supposed to be doing dueling with this group with another group, etc. So I think having a tag for like not for sale would make a lot of sense there as well. Those are things that we started on, and I think got like maybe halfway done or something, but there's still work there that needs to be done, and it's not ready. It got put on the back burner because of all these things that have been happening recently. But I'll let Beetle Dude maybe speak more to that. I know he was sort of like interested in that as well.
Sure. What in particular? I was busy chatting too much.
The
No.
tagging system for heroes.
Yes. Uh, yes, we've been looking into a way to basically let people log in with their wallets, and basically having an account based on their wallet, which would let us do things like tagging. There were some other items as well. I mean, like user preferences, things that we're currently using for that we're using local storage sometimes for. We could kind of transition into more of a database structure to kind of store that. Because yeah, I mean, I think you're saying it right now, but that's stuff that doesn't need to be stored on chain, or would be a lot less efficient stored on chain, and isn't really secure, doesn't need to be super secure necessarily, but just so people can have a better experience, a better user experience. So there's a lot that goes into that. I guess I would preface that a little bit. That is a little bit more of a lift, so that's why it hasn't been prioritized up until now. We're kind of working on features that will be actual in-game features rather than quality of life stuff. So definitely on the roadmap, and we'll be excited to get to the point where we can start adding some of these great things.
Awesome. The other one I think to touch on is the adding a time delay between listing and being purchasable.
Yeah, that's right. We did talk about that one a little bit too. Not super hard to do from a smart contract side, but we would have to upgrade it. The reason why we didn't implement it on Serendale at first was because the hero sale contract in the tavern was not upgradable. And we would have to basically launch a new hero sale contract, which would then involve everyone needing to basically unlist their heroes from the old one, because it is a escrow system, and then sort of like relisting it for the new one to add those additional features. And we did start on that, but then all of the things happened, and we kind of had to stick it on the back burner as well. But that is for sure one that I think will be making its way eventually into the next iteration of the tavern, along with some other features too. There was some things we were talking about where you could set maybe a price that would slowly increase or slowly go down over time. So it might start high, and then over the course of a week it might go lower up to a certain amount. We actually did briefly launch that feature earlier this year, and I think we had to pull it back because there was some people who were setting it like to crazy amounts that could have been exploitative because the period of time was too short. So we had to put more things in place to ensure that it's not too much of a change over too short of a period, basically. But yeah, those are some of the things that we have been hitting up against for with that.
Awesome. I know we're running up on time here. We have one last question, so we can knock that out real quick, and then we will start our closing. And I know, Fox, you've got the fun news for next week that we all want to hear as well. So the last question that I wanted to hit, or the last question that was submitted, actually, in fairness, inactive Gen Zeros. So if there's a Gen Zero that, let's say, during migration does not get bridged over, it's replicated and airdropped back to the owner, some amount of time goes by, the airdrop hasn't even been claimed, would we be looking at essentially pulling those back and replacing those Gen Zeros?
I guess I'll go ahead and answer this one. Yeah, we don't have any plans to do something like that. That would essentially be us reclaiming other people's assets. And if a Gen Zero goes unused, then it goes unused, and so be it. Is our perspective on that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a really good summary of it. Awesome. So before we go to Dreamer and then Fox for any closing thoughts, does anybody have anything they wanted to add before we finish? I'm going to take that as a no. Appreciate everybody being here for the audience as well as on the stage and answering all these questions. So thank you all as always, and then we can go to Dreamer for any final thoughts, and then close out with Fox.
Cool. Thanks, Paula. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how, different cycles, different things that happen in various weeks, how these AMAs and the related questions kind of vary. It's a bit refreshing to get so many like build and feature and lore related questions. I think there was a mention a few weeks ago of like, hey, it kind of feels like we're normalizing back to some earlier levels before all the things happening in the world that we can't control. And I think that's great. I think it's also kind of a reality check on, limited resources and only being able to do so much is a real thing. And this is where kingdom building and the talk site and really talented devs and collaborating with other projects comes out. Our efforts with Wisdom Gaming, that's why we are collaborating and partnering with them on PvP, because it's so important. We want to make sure that we can continue to progress that while we solve problems that 3 or 4 months ago didn't anticipate to come up with needing to do everything that we're doing is related to Serendale 2.0 and moving that to Klaytn. So I do appreciate everybody's patience. I think on the team side as well as the community side. I think as we continue to progress, we'll probably try to be more transparent about roadmap, things that are, current priorities, things that are kind of like on deck, and those that are in the hole. I always use track terminology and people make fun of me. Maybe I should take that up. But yeah, I think that's refreshing. On the event side, that's another thing that's exciting. We don't have a huge unlimited budget to show up in Singapore as we did like in Barcelona or Miami and others. And I don't think anybody should expect that to be the case. We are being very, very cautious on all spending. However, having our new partners who have a booth and are going to allocate a portion of it to us for such an important week at a very crucial strategic area is exciting. So we are going to look to do everything we can to make that impactful and effective with the limited budget that will be allocated, and all the partnerships that we're trying to make with others within the ecosystem. If some are wondering, why we're doing that, it's essentially to increase the overall adoption, right? The more partners we make, the more different, the more variety of community and projects that we have to help co-market to spread awareness, to add utility in games. So things are progressing so well from my perspective as it relates to Serendale 2.0 launch. I couldn't be happier with the team that we have here, with the community, with the Knights in the community, keeping everybody up to speed with new people that we're having show up, and with our new partners and to be new partners and everything we're going to do in the next month with a huge, kickoff at that event. And as big of a way as we can make it with the reasonable amount of resources we can spend. So awesome updates this week, and look forward to updating everybody on those plans in the coming AMAs.
Awesome. Fox, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I guess before I do so, there was the thing I had mentioned at the start that we would be announcing some of the things that we're going to be closing down next week for Serendale. Obviously, we did duels this week, and we've already announced that we'll also be turning off like the raffles next week as well. There were some people who had questions about that, but basically, oh no, I got something in my throat. For raffles, we will close down any new raffles being started next Wednesday. So any existing ones will still be able to finish out. I think there's like the weekly ones, for example, are going to end on Friday, I believe. So that's how that will work. We also are planning to turn off questing. So questing basically across the board, that will include mining, gardening, foraging, fishing, training quests, wishing well, all of that. We're also planning to turn off the meditation circle start one. So essentially, you won't be able to start any new level ups over there starting on next Wednesday, but you'll still be able to complete them until the following week. So that should be sufficient time for anyone who started one to be able to at least complete one and have that be going. The final thing that we're looking at is we will be turning the withdrawal fee for the gardens off, basically. Currently, there's a fee that actually starts high and it slowly gets lower depending on how long you have things in the gardens. We want to turn that off to allow our players and users to more easily move their assets from Harmony over to Crystal Vale, and then have them get like restaked over there. And that will also coincide with some new pools that will be opening up on Crystal Vale as well. So stay tuned for that. We will be keeping the 25% flash loan fee, which basically takes a 25% fee if you put things into the garden and then withdraw it in the same block. That's to prevent like flash loan attacks and things like that. So just FYI, if you're trying to do anything to hack our protocol, you're going to get wrecked. So don't do that. That will be staying, but other than that, the other ones will be removed. And that is it for next week. We have a lot of things the following week that are going to be coming, which are a little bit more tentative. As things get further out, it gets more and more tentative because, again, it's sort of like a moving target. But the plan right now, tentatively, for the following week is going to involve a lot of things with heroes, including like auctions, and you won't be able to complete any quests after the following week. So to be clear, next week you won't be able to start any more quests starting on Wednesday. You'll still be able to complete them until the following week, after which time you won't be able to complete them anymore. You'll just have to basically use the cancel option and not get any like rewards for that if you wait over a week to complete your quest. So that's some of those things. Also on the following week, we're sort of eyeing things like the stone carver and item trader and some of the pet hatching things as well. So yep, that's what we're thinking right now. Again, we will be putting together some form of a more cohesive, easy to consume timeline for these things to the community. So stay tuned for that as well. But we are starting to basically step towards closing down Serendale, starting to have the lights get turned a bit lower and lower until they eventually will turn off. And during this process, we're encouraging our users to please bridge over to Crystal Vale. Make sure your assets are there and they're safe, and that you'll be able to continue to play and enjoy the game there. So with that out of the way, yeah, it's been a lot of stuff going on. As I said earlier, it's sort of like feeling like a flashback to last year at about this time, when we were sort of like rapidly sort of like trying to ramp up our operations and doing all kinds of things all at once. And we have that same energy right now, where there's a lot of really good, really dedicated team members that are committed, that are hard at work, a lot of energy. And it's the same energy that I felt last year, and it's really good to feel that same energy again this year. So really excited for that, and excited for the future of this. And as we relaunch this over there on Klaytn, we have a lot more going for us this year than what we had last year at this time. So that feels really amazing as well. And it's really great to see all of you here in the community. And I'm very grateful for all the amazing people we have there as well. So thank you. And a huge shout out to our team for all the hard work that they're doing as well. And with that, I'll just say, see you guys in chat. Bullish.
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 Bullish.